So wise with Flock, which is a property management. It's quite a big company of a lot of different branches that I'm going to let Lisa explain. Let me just bring her in here. Let's see. There you are. Hi, Lisa.
Mark, how are you?
It's been so long.
I know. It's going to be longer.
Yeah.
At least before we get to share a cocktail, right?
It's going to be longer. Mayor Muriel Bowser did do an extension of our quarantine until June 8th. And I believe Governor Ralph Northam, what did he do? Did he do the 29th?
He did Northern Virginia. It's going to stay out longer, yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, so tell us about you and what companies are under your umbrella.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about, you know, how you're not really the bad person just because you're property management. And,
yeah.
I'm going to plug in my computer. So take it away.
Okay, thank you. So I'm the chief flockster of Flock DC, which is a family of property management companies. We also kind of like to consider ourselves a lifestyle company. We had a really simple idea 11 years ago, which was to be a great landlord, manage great property, give people an exceptional living experience, take really good care of them. We felt like if you take great care of people in great spaces, then you know, you'll attract great residents. And when people are happy where they live, they make better neighbors. You know, they lead to better neighborhoods, and neighborhoods that are strong make better cities. And we've always been super values and mission based. That's been our moral compass. It's what we hang our hat on. And we grew from just one little property at a time, like the little engine that could. And the growth was super organic. We spent a lot of time just networking and creating a strong sense of community and partnerships with different organizations and people that supported what we wanted to do, which is to really bring a stellar living experience to the property management world, when we always felt like property management had earned its less than stellar reputation, in part because it's just very transactional by design, and it tends to be very focused on cash flow. And we decided to turn that around and actually make it very relational and think a lot less about profits and a lot more about people in place. So we designed a company that was very forward thinking and purpose driven and cared a lot more about experience. And then at the end felt like if we did all of that well, then we would be profitable. But then we also measure profit not in just dollars and cents, but we measure profit and the number of great jobs we can offer our team members. So we launched our first brand in 2008, right around the Great Recession, or in response to, other words, the Great Recession. And there was clearly an appetite in the city for what we had to do and how we were doing it differently. And you know, I didn't take a salary for 4 years, which was challenging. And but at the same time, I knew if we were going to offer you know, truly a service-based and forward-thinking business model, we had to have a great team to do that. And if I was taking all the salary, we weren't going to be able to deliver on that promise. So I kept reinvesting in the company by making sure that any income that we had was directed toward our team members and adding great talent. And that was a good decision. And when we did become sustainable in 2012, I realized, you know, I'd like to share this bounty, which is minimal, but still it was, for me at that point, becoming sustainable as a company meant that I had a secure future as a business owner if I had that sort of proof of concept. And it was something I really wanted to share with my team. And I wanted to create an ownership pathway, but I didn't want to split Nest DC up. That didn't make sense logically. So what we did was we teased out a second business model, which was Roost DC, which many of you may be familiar with. And Roost doesn't manage individual rentals, but Roost manages condo buildings and cooperatives in the city. Typically buildings are in the 10-unit range all the way up to 150 units. And we teased that company out to be a separate entity and one that is employee owned. So that is our second business model. Roost is rounding out our 6th year in business. And finally, we introduced Starling DC, which is our kind of design and turnover team that gets spaces resident ready. And that's an adorable starling on a hammer. And then suddenly we realized that all of our birds were confusing people and that we had to kind of create some clarity around what this all meant. And then, of course, we had ideas for other birds we wanted to sort of set free. And so what we did was we took a pause and we created an entity called Flock DC, and Flock is now the parent company. We joke that Flock came after all the babies hatched, and the parent came last. So that sort of mother bird is our umbrella organization and our company brands, and all of the birds sort of nest under Flock. So some of you may have seen the Flock mural that we have of Ruth Bader Ginsburg on 15th and U is releasing a flock of birds, and that's our brand's mural, and it's going to give us room, we think, to kind of grow and expand our work.
It's so cute. Like, I remember when you started this, and I think that one of the parts that I really respected was when you're involving your employees in the ownership. And we all know that property management companies cannot be so great. So giving people a little bit of ownership in the company that they work for sure does make them try harder and believe in it and really follow, the culture that you put out there.
Yeah. There are a number of problems with property management. First and foremost, it's a really hard industry and burnout is high. And it's very, compensation tends to be traditionally low. You'll see an ownership take all the money and then, kind of leave as little as possible by design for their team members. And so there's very little incentive to deliver exceptional customer service, and there's very little incentive to stay. So what you do is you have people that have learned to do the job and hopefully do it well, say, this isn't worth it. I'm rolling out. I'm going to go to an industry that's not as stressful, that doesn't have people angry and coming at you all the time, where I have a better compensation model. So, how do you change that landscape? And you do it by getting investment from people, by supporting your team and delivering great work, by creating systems that are scalable, by leveraging technology so that you're not having to start from scratch with every building, by being a partner with your buildings and your residents rather than battling with them. And that has kind of solved two of the key problems, which is high turnover and this kind of lack of commitment to delivering great service. And the ownership model has solved those problems for us.
Sure has. It was a brilliant approach. It really was. Times have changed in the middle of this pandemic. How is the pandemic treating you in your business?
Nobody's immune from this moment in time. And, our business isn't thriving like Zoom. We're not Zooming along. We are connecting by Zoom, but we have certainly seen a downshift in income, and we've had to work really quickly to completely readjust our budget expectations to have a very anemic business model, to support our team almost exclusively remotely, to try and manage property that we can't physically be in or visit is kind of mind-numbing. All that said, I think we've done a stellar job of being almost 100% operational, that in emergencies, we are able to enter units in what we believe is a safe way with vendors that are following very rigid protocols, and with residents that are being sensitive to our needs to have them be very distant from our teams when they're in units. But for the most part, trying to spend our time handling some things that a great shoulder season offer, which is doing exterior maintenance and repairs so that we can keep people outside and safer for sure. We're seeing a lot of empathy among our client base and residents, and we're also seeing a lot of people on the verge all the time. So just very low tolerance for unit-to-unit noise, or someone who's decided to jog over another person's head, or someone who's leaving their stinky sneakers outside their door. Nothing's allowed in the hallway. We could go kind of on and on with this anecdotal, it's a sort of the frustration prison that I think many people feel like they're in, particularly if they're in high-density living. And in a city, that is a lot of people's living reality. So I think the adrenaline and the sort of this is a very extended snow day has melted. The adrenaline's been replaced with anxiety and uncertainty, and I think people's nerves are frayed. And we've seen some less than stellar behavior from residents to each other, from residents to boards, from boards to residents, from boards to us. Nobody's immune to the frustration that other folks have sort of misdirected in some cases.
What happens when, let's say, you're managing my property and the dishwasher breaks, or, I mean, like what kinds of things is actually an emergency for you to enter the apartment?
Yeah.
Is there a definition of that?
Yeah. For the first sprint, right, which would be like the first 4 weeks of lockdown, it was a hard no on any repair that didn't have to do with a refrigerator or a heating and cooling issue that would obviously impact the livability of that unit. We basically procured a large number of portable refrigerators, apartment-sized refrigerators, so that we had an option so that we could place one in front of someone's door. They could move it into their unit and not have someone enter.
Brilliant.
That was a strong strategy there. Dishwashers were things that we were going to pause on, but we did line up a pretty decent bench of people that were going to follow those strong protocols. Certain challenges have been less so getting a vendor in to make the repair, and more so the part needed and or the replacement needed to actually satisfy that need. So refrigerators, they're not available anymore. They're 2 months out for a new refrigerator. LG closed all their factories, so we cannot get a replacement refrigerator. Dishwashers are a little bit easier, but my guess is that supply chain will start to dry up, and even those will be less easily procured. Right now, we're in the middle of working really hard to help our residents understand that you need to gently use everything. This idea of planned obsolescence is not a favorable scenario for us right now. People need to take care of their things and act like it's the last one they're going to get for a while. You can't just swap something out and toss it. You have to try and make sure you get as much life out of it as possible. And, refrigerators are sort of designed these days to last 7 years rather than 20, because you're swapping them out for finish, right? Not for actually function. And that story needs to get rewritten going forward. We are, we've launched and have been very effective with a virtual maintenance program, an inspection program, which we're actually kind of using both as an inspection program and a wellness program. We want to make sure our residents are doing okay. So we have several of our maintenance technicians have been using and leveraging Zoom and FaceTime and other visual technology to walk our residents through an inspection to make sure that they're safe in that unit, to just check and see if they're okay from a social emotional perspective. I mean, we're not having them fill out a questionnaire, but we want to make sure they're okay. And then if they have maintenance issues where we can help them self-serve, then we'll handle that with them. So that includes things like, changing an air filter or clearing out an air filtration on a faucet, or adjusting a water heater, or clearing a garbage disposal. Those are all things people can do. And sometimes just watching the YouTube and then trying to do it yourself doesn't feel as good as having someone walk you through that over the phone. So we've been able to introduce that service, I think, to pretty significant enthusiasm. And obviously at this time, just like any other business owner, we're going to study like what's working better now than it did before, and how do we make sure that when we're able to have more freedoms in how we operate as a business and as individuals, can we make things easier for people? So that's kind of where we are with in-house or in-unit maintenance.
Well, you certainly did the pivot that everyone is talking about with our businesses right now as entrepreneurs. What happens when you spoke about refinancing before we came on? Just because rates are so great. What happens when an owner wants to refi their unit, but there's a tenant in the unit?
Yeah.
Have you run into that yet? I've heard about drive-by appraisals, but I've also heard that not everyone's doing those.
Yeah, I think the drive-by appraisal appetite is basically up to the lender, whether they're going to accept that drive-by appraisal. My guess is that typically for a condo unit, that's not going to be as likely, because driving by a giant building tells you nothing about a unit, rather than to contextualize where it is. In some cases, there are, in the same way that we've needed to really think through how we do things virtually, home appraisers have had to do the same. If you can get the collaboration from your resident, then they can typically help walk that appraiser through to sort of get measurements and or at least a visual of the space. And then they can use any listing information to kind of navigate what the size parameters and things are. That said, I mean, there are some cases where, appraisers have wanted to go into units and it's just a hard no. We're basically not even trying to facilitate that. An owner's interest in having us help them kind of advance their interest in doing a refi, we absolutely understand it, but we also have a duty to the resident and making sure they're feeling safe right now. And we have to just kind of help get creative with them and ask your lender if there's another way for them to do this. And for the most part, we've been able to manage that without very many snags.
That's good to know. I had one person ask me about that yesterday, so that's why I brought it up.
And if anybody's refinancing a rental, they're not going to do a drive-by appraisal if it's a house. They're going to want more granular information. So for a refi of an owner-occupied, you're going to be able to, in some cases, get away with a drive-by, but they'll never allow that on a rental. It's going to be considered a much riskier refinance right now in this climate.
Interesting. I love watching how things are materializing as we go. We are kind of setting the stage for if anything like this happens again, we kind of, we have something to work with. We know what's going to happen. We're writing a book on how do we change our business if something like this happens in the future. So yeah, I love that. You are a wonderful citizen that is attached to a lot of different charities. Do you have any that you know of right now that you're really supporting or in need at this point?
There isn't a charity in the country that doesn't have a very genuine need right now. For our company has always been really all in on helping organizations from visibility to cash money where we can support folks to doing fundraisers and other visibility things. I'm the board chair for Women Walker Health, and they are right now delivering healthcare on the front lines. They're doing COVID testing. They're caring for people in their respiratory clinic. They're offering services both east of the river and on 14th Street. They too have, and it's a we because I'm very engaged in that organization, have been able to facilitate, deliveries of pharmaceuticals for folks that need prescriptions, and have continued a lot of care through a telehealth model. But even still, there are a lot of services they've had to postpone and pause, which means a lot of their income is at risk. And it also means that as they've got workers really engaging with community right now, trying to deliver that care, they're putting themselves at risk of contracting COVID and then of course perhaps passing that on to their families. So we've focused on Women Walker Health. La Clinica del Pueblo is another federally qualified health center that we've supported quite a bit. The same with Bread for the City. We've been doing some work with the Latin American Youth Center and other organizations where they're really kind of delivering on that frontline medical care or community care, where we're realizing that we're going to have more gaps in the accessibility of critical services, whether it be food, healthcare, social services, education, continuity. There are gaps everywhere we look, particularly as the homeschool model is one that we're all sort of suffering through right now. And there's certainly degrees of suffering, right? Some are just getting zero access to education. So we're looking at everything that we can do as an organization that has a pretty decent wing print in the city, how we can, at a minimum, create visibility, but in a best case scenario, help leverage our community to actually provide resources. And we've done some fun things with different community partners. Chaya Tacos, the owner of that restaurant, they've got a store in Georgetown. They've got a store in Gallery Place. So we were able to raise about $5,000 with them. And then what they do is every Friday we try and feed another one of those federally qualified health centers and or a different organization like the District Alliance for Safe Housing provides support and housing to, sexual assault survivors. So we're looking at all the different folks that are really sacrificing their own safety and security to deliver really, really valuable and essential services to people that are not going to get what they need right now. So we're trying to do what we can to help that.
You're such a wonderful community leader. There's definitely a shortage of people like you. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for doing that. NestDC.com, is that correct?
Yep, or nest-dc.com.
Right. And it's for a single unit or an owner that owns a condo or a house, and you need property management, a property management company that doesn't suck. And then the other one is Roost.
Yep.
So if you're on the board of a condominium association and you're really hating your management company or your contract is up, definitely reach out to them. These guys do a really great job, and everyone that I refer them out to, they have nothing but really great things to say about them. Nice. So
back action, Mark. Everybody we send your way has been really thrilled.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for joining us today. You have anything else to add?
Yeah, I want everyone to just consider what you need to do to stay safe and, you know, honor public health right now. It's really hard to stay home. It's hard to live in this kind of climate of insecurity, but at the same time, I think all the sacrifices that we make now will help us get where we want to be faster. So for everyone that's staying home, thank you. For everybody that's out there providing an essential service, thank you. For everybody that's has or will work with us, thank you. And to the folks that take the time to make these connections, we really appreciate it.
Times are tough. Check on each other. People are struggling. We have each other virtually.
Yeah, we do.
And we will get through this together.
Yeah.
I'm Mark Rutstein with the Rutstein Group. We are your area local real estate agents with Compass. And today's community check-in was with Lisa Wise. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.